Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Schlachter, and as Daniela said, I'm Executive Director of FP 2020. And in coming out here today, I thought I'd talk about power, because to me, contraception is power. And the reason I came to FP 2020 is the pathway through my family. And I think the stories of what bring us all to family planning and to working on SRHR and rights and women's development are all based in our families. So I wanted to share my story with you. So I start by showing you this picture of my mother when she was 27 years old and already had 5 children and was already divorced. My mother grew up in a Catholic family going to Catholic school. And when she was 18, she shared with the nuns that she too wanted to be a nun. And they very kindly told her they thought that maybe something else would be a better future for her, and they encouraged her to go to university. And she did. So she went to a Catholic university where she met my father, and where she found that there was a tension between being in love with somebody and being very sexually attracted to them and being at a Catholic university. So they got married right before she turned 19. And one after another, she had my sisters and then ultimately my brother and I. So that by the time she was 26, she had 5 kids. And she was living with my dad in Southern California where she knew nobody. She had all these children and she had a husband who wasn't coming home and who wasn't supporting her. So she went to the Catholic Church, and it was 1968, and it was when they were deciding whether or not it was okay to be a Catholic and use contraception. And she had a sister-in-law who lived right here in Vancouver. And that sister-in-law had gone to her priest to say, I'd like to time and space my pregnancies. And the priest said, that's fine. We're looking at contraception, and we think that it's going to be okay as a Catholic to use it. My mother had a very different experience. So as a Catholic woman with 5 children under the age of 6 and a husband who wasn't coming home, she went to the person that she'd always trusted the most in her life, and that was her priest. And she said, can I get contraception too? Because I need help. And he said, no. You made your choice. You're a Catholic woman. You're married. You have these kids. Go home. Basically, suck it up. This is your life, and you have to deal with it. So for my mother, that was the last straw. And through a series of decisions, she had a breakdown, and my mom lost custody of us. And so in the divorce that succeeded that, we ended up living with my father, who in spite of not being a very good husband, was a very loving father. And my dad raised us. So this is one of the last times that I was with my mom as a family before we just visited my mom. So for the rest of my life, I grew up visiting my mom every other weekend and every Wednesday night with my brothers and sisters. And I look at this picture and I think what a child she was, raising all these children and completely unsupported. And so imagine my mom living in Los Angeles in 1968, the most liberal city in the world, presumably, and this is her reality. And she had to live with the shame of being a young woman who wasn't raising her kids for the rest of her life. So that's why I come to contraception, because I believe it's power, and I believe it's also about mental health and about who we are as people and the control that we have over our destinies. So I think about that all the time at FP 2020. Sorry, I went backwards. Let me go forward. Where our goal is to reach 120 million additional women and girls so that they too can choose how many kids they have and how they live their lives, and whether they have a choice to be something other than a mother and somebody who's told something other than to just go back home and suck it up. So for me, as we make progress on this goal, and even though we're short on it, it's every woman and girl within that that matters. We're known at FP 2020 for data and evidence and metrics, but to me, that data and evidence and those metrics are about people. And the system that we've created is one that seeks to connect down to every woman who needs this health care, and to create a communications channel, a system that can learn from itself so that we can be smarter and better as a global community of meeting the needs of women and girls. So how do we do this at FP 2020? One of the things we do is we ask countries to make their own commitment about family planning. What do you want to achieve for the people in your country? And then what's your pathway to that success? What's your plan for achieving that? And the picture I'm showing you was taken 2 weeks ago in Ethiopia, where we brought together 18 countries in Africa. We work with both English-speaking and French-speaking countries, so this was the commitment group from English-speaking countries. And they spend a week learning from each other and learning from technical experts and drafting their plan for the next year. What are we going to do to improve supply chains? How are we going to increase more funding? And critically, they talk to one another, and they learn within the region about how they're going to do their work. So in this last meeting, the Gambia spent time with Kenya, learning how they mobilized resources. Zambia asked to spend time with Mozambique about how they're reaching young people because they have a more successful program that's integrated across all ministries. And Somalia spent time with Rwanda, asking them about their postpartum family planning program and how they scaled that up. So we create these opportunities for individual people to learn from each other so the systems and the planning are smarter, and then that information can go up to global donors, to the global architecture, to places like this, where we can all learn from the individual experiences of countries and people who are working within these family planning systems. And the critical element of all of this that resonates with everybody is that this is a rights-based framework, meaning that nobody can tell a woman what she can and can't use, but we seek to try to create a system that can meet their individual needs. And I show you this picture, which I realize is a pretty lousy slide because it's a picture of a picture, but I couldn't find the original picture, so this is the best I can do. But it's of the IPPF representative from Afghanistan when we were together in the Philippines a couple years ago. And during that meeting, we introduced our rights-based framework. We shared the human rights principles that are the foundation of what rights-based family planning means, and we broke it down into the systems of delivery and what it means to have a rights-based program, talking about accessible services, the hours that things are open, having methods that are acceptable to women that they want to use, that there's a system that's built on their needs. And she was so moved by this framework that she asked to take a picture with it, because she said, working in Afghanistan is incredibly difficult, as we can all imagine, but it's also isolating. She's at the front end of social change and working in one of the hardest places in the world where there's so much to transition so that women and girls have agency. And for her, and you can see this look on her face, knowing that she was part of a global family planning community and that there are rights and ethical principles behind her that had her back, she said meant the world to her. So when I think about the value of partnership, I think about FP 2020 and what we want for a world going toward 2030, I remember this friend and how what seems like basic principles meant so much to her and motivated her as a person, for all of the women that she's going to individually meet and have to serve, and how difficult and draining that can be as a service provider. So I want to end with some parting thoughts. And I end with this photo, which is a UNFPA photo of a young girl in Cox's Bazar. It was taken late last year. Sorry about that. And I don't know who this girl is, but when I see her, I like to imagine that she climbed up on top of this house because she's a child, and she wanted to play, and she wanted a moment of freedom. And I can only imagine the horrors that she experienced with her family, and I hope that she was with her family, as she escaped from Myanmar to Cox's Bazar and the relative safety of a squalid refugee camp. But the spirit of life sort of pulses through this girl. But she's also looking at each and every one of us and asking us to look back at her and to not forget her. So when I'm myself as executive director of FP 2020, and I think about these global systems, all of this communication, all of this work that we have to do together, I remember my mother, and I think about what it means to have no power. And I think about this girl and everything that we would hope for her and how much better we want the world to be than this for her. And I also think about what I see out of the corner of my eye above the UNFPA station, where it says more than my mother, but less than my daughter. And my daughter and my niece are both here, and I can see them out of the left side of my eye. And Katie and Emily are with me today, and they're both 19, and they both just finished their first year of university. And I want so much for them. And I'm so proud to share this Women Deliver conference with them, and this spirit that we all have that we're working in solidarity and unity with one another for girls just like this and girls just like Katie and Emily. So thank you for your partnership. Thank you for investing in women and girls. And thank you for helping us to make FP 2020 as good as it can be.